Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Smart to Move booth. We're the Force Plate Company. Our mission is to promote the use of force plates. We think it's one of the most valuable tools that we can use in evaluating a player. If we think about force plate technology, it's Dr. Rose, who spoke yesterday, has framed it almost perfectly in that the force plates give us the how. We have a lot of tools that give us the what's happening in the golf swing. As golf professionals, we see what's happening with our eyes. We're skilled at evaluating the player, what they're doing in front of us. A little more sophisticated is 2D video. We can see face on, down the line. That gives us a lot of information. Now, these are just what is happening in the golf swing. Now, we get more sophisticated on top of that is 3D motion capture. So AMM system, gears, any kind of system that's giving us significant degrees of freedom, so 6. So we can measure lateral motion, so sway, thrust the movement towards and away from the golf ball, lift, and then rotation. So rotation, side bend, bend. These 6 degrees of freedom that motion capture, sophisticated 3D motion capture gives us. Again, this is just layers of sophistication of what's happening. Our TrackMan, GC Quad, our other launch monitor technology, again, that's what's happening. How fast are we swinging the golf club? What is the golf ball speed? What is the club doing? Face, path, angle of attack, axis tilt, all these aspects of club and ball, that is what's happening. We have very limited tools to give us insight into how the player is producing their characteristic swing. And that's what force plate technology does. There's only 2 connections that we have in the golf swing if we think about it. Your hands to the club, extremely important, and your feet to the ground. So what we are doing with the force plate technology, we're measuring that interaction between the foot and the ground. And that gives us a lot of information, and Justin and I are going to talk about that today. My name is Jason Zuback, 6-time World Long Drive Champion. I'm an advisory staff member for Smart to Move, helping with educational development, coaching development, interaction with players to increase that experience, get players better using force plate technology. I'm also involved with TPI, advisory staff member, co-developer of the Power 2 and Power 3 tracks with TPI. I've been involved for 20 years with the TPI program. The TPI Power program, which Justin actually contributes as well and helps us with Power 3 program, is a deep dive into the power in the golf swing. My cohort, Justin, in our Power 3 program, I want to introduce you to him. Justin, 2017 World Long Drive Champion, former world #1 ranked long driver in the world. Justin has been in the upper echelon of long drive for a very long time. I've known Justin since he was a very small boy. I competed with his father, so many, many years. And it's amazing to see the transformation of a young boy going through to a world champion. And Justin's father, Jerry James, was an amazing long driver, very big fellow, and him and I were sort of nemesis for a long, long time. But Justin, 10-time tour event winner on the long drive world tour. You know, Justin, as well as a exemplary athlete, actually pitching or being in the Toronto Blue Jays organization for a couple of years, playing professional baseball. Also, Justin, certified strength and conditioning specialist. So he's got a broad spectrum of obviously athletic ability and talent, but also blended with a good deal of knowledge. So Justin will help me present today. I want to start off by just welcoming everyone, welcoming Justin, and we're going to start off taking a look at Justin, or actually this is 2019 swing, so this is 2 years removed from his world championship, and I just want to show you guys, you know, what this looks like. This is the first time I'm standing on the tee actually filming this, and I'm good at picking out. I've been involved with launch monitor technology for more than 20 years, so I'm pretty good at sort of picking out what the club head speed is, what the ball speed is. This is the first time I've ever seen, you know, we didn't have monitor at this time on the tee deck, but I guarantee this one was over 230 miles an hour. So that's the first ball over 230 miles an hour in my estimation that I've ever seen. And you could see just the amount of violence involved. You can see that relocation of that lead foot.
And we'll look at today like how my patterns changed over the years as I worked on force plates. in an effort to get more efficient, kind of take some toll off my body. My club selections changed, so this shaft was extremely stiff, 5x, basically 300 CPM, about as stiff as you can make a shaft. The trend in long drive has been to go softer, and I think we've seen that in the industry with stuff like autoflex and guys going down. My pattern and how I use the ground has had to change as I've changed equipment and tried to take it easier on my body. So as we're gonna get into, I have less vertical forces now than I did then. Arguably I could be a little bit more efficient, but we're trying to find ways to obviously maximize what we're dealing with. And I think the question, like for PGA professionals, is like, what is ideal? You're gonna have more players that are more lateral, some players more vertical, and so do you wanna increase the vertical? Do you wanna add more lateral? Those are some of the questions that we get into, like in Power 3 and that we're gonna look at today.
So again, you know, there's some great stuff in what Justin said, in that with Dr. Rose looking at the 3D kinematic, but more so the force plate technology, and trying to get Justin more efficient. It's not about more magnitude all the time when we're looking at these forces. And when we're looking at the ground reaction forces, we're looking at 3 different forces. We're looking at lateral, that's the force exerted away from the target, towards the target. Then we have what we call anterior posterior forces, the force exerted towards the golf ball and away, which helps create rotation. So you have one foot pushing one way, one foot pushing the other, which creates a rotation about the axis. And then we have the vertical. When we watch TV, the guys say, you know, the guy's using the ground. Most often they're seeing this vertical, so that's that vertical push. So those 3 linear forces, when we can figure out what the rotational forces are from the linear forces. So we have 3 rotational forces occurring in conjunction with those 3 linear forces. So we have rotation about the vertical axis, so what we call vertical torque or horizontal plane torque. We have frontal plane torque. We'll call this rock and roll. Dr. Rose likes to call this one twist. And then we have sagittal plane torque, what I call tippy bird. That's this motion here. So it's rotation about those 3 different axes. Some coaches will say, well, we can't really change your ground, you know, like when you present with one pattern, you're kind of stuck with that pattern. I don't believe that at all. That's, you know, our coaching, when we coach people, we're coaching potentially to change a pattern, right? Change a motor pattern or establish a new motor pattern. That's the more appropriate term with motor learning. But as we can see in this swing, that is significantly different than Justin's first swing that I've been wearing you guys out with on the reel. Now you can see he's not relocating that lead foot to the extent as Justin has done in the past. There's some significant differences with the lateral motion, the rotation about the vertical axis. Now, if we apply this on a little more, this is Justin last year going after it. So this is high effort. But again, you can see the amount of effort going into this one. Let's slow it down a little bit now we can see again from that first capture from 2019 where Justin was pushing over 300% of his body weight into the ground. And Justin, that's, you know, the top upper echelon in the world and usable vertical force, probably the best at doing it. But this is significantly less. This is about 245% of his body weight combined that he's exerting to the ground. But you can see way less, he's still relocating that lead foot because he still has a significant amount of vertical force, but also that rotational force and that lead foot, what we call braking force, and I'll get into that in a second. But you can see that this pattern is slightly different. So Justin, through his work with ground reaction forces, some of the prompting of the change of these forces has been a slight equipment change or the softening of the golf shaft. But again, we've changed his force pattern, but more so in an efficient pattern. This is saving his body. As I mentioned, it's not always magnitude of force all the time. It's potentially getting you more efficient at developing rotational capacity or rotational velocity perhaps earlier, you know, so the timings of that are going to be very important, and I'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah, some of that came about too because I was starting to get pain in my left hip, pain in my left ankle. As I started to get more and more force into the ground, I actually started to get my left hip below my right hip in transition. you'll have a lot of guys that work on, which I love, like the downshift board, and I don't remember what they call theirs, but basically the tilt board. I feel like if you do that incorrectly and you just fall into the lead side, you'll see that a lot. Well, now my left hip is lower than my right hip, and I started to actually get like some pain, impingement, etc. So Dr. Rose and I worked real hard on what felt like a giant slide to me, which was just adding some frontal plane. Now that hip was kind of unlocked. And so that's part of the reason, like just because my vertical force production went down does not mean that your ball speed was gonna go down, because I added some, perhaps some more lateral, some more frontal. So that was a change that saved my body. And then partly as well, I made up for some of the lack of vertical forces with a bit of a softer shaft. And so that's where the efficiency part would come in. So it's not that I don't have the capacity for that vertical anymore, but as I change my pattern to try to be a little bit more efficient and a little less reliant on lateral, the ground reaction forces changed, and I was able to maintain a similar level of speed.
Very good. And with the force plates, it gives us a measurable, because we can measure all these aspects. We're seeing the actual change manifested physically, but the force always precedes the motion. Torque precedes motion. This is Newton's first law. An object at rest tends to stay at rest. Object in motion tends to stay in motion unless acted on by an unbalanced force or a force. So that means if I want the golfer to go towards a target, I'm going to have to produce a force first before that action can take place. And it's not the ground that's magically creating these things, it's the internal muscle actions that are creating the forces in the golf swing. We do have what we call stretch shortening. When we stretch a muscle and we stretch fascia, we stretch tendons, we stretch ligaments, that creates some recoil, some extra force, extra torque in the swing. So that's important, but the basis for motion is muscular action. Things that don't happen by magic. Muscular action is the rudimentary aspect that causes this change. So let's take a look at Justin. And I'm going to show you some secret sauce of Justin James. So this is at TPI. This is where we're looking, 2024.
This is the kind of newer pattern where there's less vertical. And I was really working on trying to, like I said before, add some frontal plane to take some pressure off my left hip, pressure off my left ankle. So you'll see that.
Right, so I'm going to pull out a few, I'm just going to explain these graphs super quickly. So this bottom one is Justin's lateral. So that's him producing force either away, this reactionary force away from the target. So if Justin wanted to load into this trail side, he's going to have to push towards the target. We get a reactionary force that will go interact with center mass to move him to this trail side to load that trail side. Now, if Justin wants to, if he's loading that trail side, he's moved slightly off the ball, he has to recenter, then eventually get to the lead foot, Justin's gonna have to produce lateral force towards the target. The way he does that, there's a number of different ways, but predominantly a push down and away. The reactionary force now is towards the target. That can interact with his center mass. And if he's doing it enough and for long enough a time, he'll create a recentering and then eventually to that lead side. So this bottom dark line is his lateral forces. This next one is his rotational vertical torque or horizontal plane torque. The lateral force, number one, I'm going to give you a quick synopsis of that. That lateral force helps us to load in that trail side, can help us stabilize, it can help us change direction of the golf club. When we create this lateral force, it can create early phase speed, late phase speed, but lateral force helps us sequence our forces in the swing, and also it sets up our other forces. It's kind of like a Swiss Army knife. It does a lot of different things and a lot of great things. The next one is our vertical torque or our horizontal plane torque. That's the rotation about the vertical axis. That gets the club behind us, brings it to the front, creates speed, and impacts how we deliver the club. This next graph is vertical, so that's that push into the ground. So if the player's gonna push into the ground, he has to go down first. Just think about us doing a vertical jump. If we're gonna jump as high as you can, you have to go down before you come up. Best players in the world, fastest players in the world, they'll get to the top, they'll soften, and they'll explode. So we'll see what this is that vertical component, combined vertical. This is what we call our kinetic sequence, and I'm going to take you through a couple of positions here. I'm going to show you first of all, and we have some really cool stuff. So obviously this is a 2D face-on representation, Justin swing. This is the force vector. So these are the forces and the directions. So the arrows are a representation of the magnitude or how much force is being produced and in what direction. This is the combination of both the lead and so the blue one is his lead foot, red is trail. That's the combined. This is our line of pressure, and this is our pressure distribution. So that's our pressure distribution. So between the feet, that'll always be 100 as long as one foot is on, or any aspect of the foot is on the platform or on the plate. Now, if we get, first of all, we're going to take a look at when does Justin maximize that load into the trail side? When does that percentage get to the highest number? So he's building. So right there at P2, when club shaft is parallel, Justin's maximized, he's to 90% of his pressure is loaded into that trail side. And that gives us that ability to drive out of the trail side. You think about it, if we're going to throw a football, we're going to throw a baseball, we're going to hit a baseball, do we start on our lead side? No, if we want maximum power, we get loaded in that trail side, we drive off that trail side, drive to the lead side, stabilize.
Yeah, I drew that line there because this is what I often show people, and we'll bring it up. But I start pushing, toward the target, really basically upon takeaway. Now that's not like it's an intentional thing, but we're taking the club back with some velocity. So if I don't start pushing toward the target or applying some force, it's just gonna drag me this way, okay? So at this point here, like the number one, a big power leak I see with most is they're going to load into their right side and they're just here. It's effectively a sway. All right, with a lot of the bigger hitters, this hip is gonna wind back toward the target. So if this is pushing that way, which is driving me toward the target, you're gonna see space start to be created between the line and my right hip. Like I get farther away from that. Does that make sense? Okay, where most people will just drift into their right side. Now, a really great way to feel that, I think, is with your right foot. If it corkscrews down into the ground clockwise, that way it's gonna drive you to your left. Okay, so a lot of people as well, like in transition, you'll see this spin out this way. So if your feet go that way, generally I think it's gonna pull you back that way. If you take your right foot, dig it into the ground, and turn it clockwise like that, it's gonna push you. I don't see anybody doing this move. Come on, I'm just kidding. It's going to push you into your lead. Like, and even from a pitching perspective, one of the things I did incorrectly that I thought was correct is at the time, you would try to like cave that knee in and push from the ball of your foot that way. Okay, what I learned later, which would have helped me, and maybe we wouldn't be having this conversation, is you really wanna drive from the heel that way. That is faster. So push from the heel and the foot is gonna turn clockwise and kind of corkscrew in the ground, and that should create some of that frontal plane torque, get you to your lead side a little more forcefully and a little bit more efficiently. So that little corkscrew move I feel is really, really important. And I'll hand it back to Jason so I don't hijack the conversation.
Okay, so we had Justin loading into that trail side, 90% into that trail side by P2. When I pulled my entire PGA Tour database, I've got a very substantial one of the elite long drive, the best of the best long drive guys. I've got a substantial PGA Tour database, and for you guys, I pulled these all in an Excel sheet, but the long drive guys, they'll maximize pressure into that trail side just before P2, so about P1.8. Our PGA Tour database, they're just after P3. So at lead arm parallel, what you'll see with the amateur player, they keep that rocking and rolling into that trail side. They keep building that pressure, or that pressure distribution keeps loading into that trail side all the way to the top. Now they're dead, right?
And that's why taking it back with some more velocity, like often will lead to increased club head speed. That's why, like, if you're trying to work on speed, like low and slow is one of the worst things, because again, if I throw this back here, there's 20 pounds of pressure I have to push against. If I take it back like super slow, there's no pressure. So that's gonna make you produce more ground reaction forces, and that's why that quicker backswing tempo can often lead to a little more club head speed on the downswing.
So as well, one of the next things we look at with Justin is that, remember he said he starts pushing, he pushes away from the target to create that positive ground reaction force early in the swing. So when Justin's thinking about taking it back, he's already, but Justin does a little bit of this rocking move. We saw Kyle Brookshire kind of popularize this, right, where he rock to the trail, to the lead, back to the trail, and takes it away. Martin Borgmeier, same thing. All the elite long drive guys, they have a fairly distinctive pattern of this rocking motion. That can really help your average player to realize that loading into that trail side early. So Martin Borgmeier's more sort of this motion, but before he's ever taking the club back, and before the majority of long drive guys take the club back, they're already substantially getting loaded or prepping to load into that trail side. Now, if we look at, Justin, Justin alluded to, we're throwing the club back with the arms. The club is traveling back, the arms are traveling back, we're starting to rotate, but as well, what Justin has done at this point, he's producing 16% of his body weight, he's pushing towards the target, and that's going to help him load. Now, the long drive guys have a wider stance. Quite often they're bigger, physically than our PGA Tour. So PGA Tour height is probably just a tick under 6 feet, and our long drive average height is over 6'2". Generally a lot bigger guys, but the stance width in general is wider. I pulled my database. The long drive stance width is about 20, almost 29 inches. My PGA Tour database for driver is just a tick under 20, so it's 20.8 inches. Now you can see there's like a 8-inch difference in stance width. So for Justin to load into that trail side, he's got to move his center of mass, or that collection, when center of mass, what all that means is that if we added up all the matter in the body, it's where it's concentrated. So that's actually including the club, including the arm, the head, the torso, the pelvis, the arm, the legs, the feet, everything. He's going to have to relocate that because that stance width is so wide. Now, if we look at some of the timings of these other forces, so Justin is going to peak his lateral right at the top of the swing, and that's common with our PGA Tour players. I'll see the long drive guys peak that just a tick earlier. So we're seeing a trend here. They get loaded earlier. They start the positive lateral earlier. They're achieving peak lateral earlier. Now, if we look at Justin when he peaks what we call the horizontal plane torque or vertical torque at this point here, we can see he's just after the top of the swing, so P 4.2. Now, long drive guys about that P 4.25 to 4.5. PGA Tour P5, our lead arm parallel. So again, we see this commonality of when these forces are occurring with the long drive guys. Why is that? If we're producing forces from the ground, that has to come through the body, out the arms, to the club. So the earlier you get it into the system, the more potential it can get out of the system to the club. Now, if we look at vertical, this is one of Justin's secret sauce as well. When we get to peak vertical, remember I said he was 300% before? This one was, we had Justin on TrackMan. He was just kind of making a very pedestrian move on it. Like, he was averaging 212 to 215 miles an hour ball speed. And these aren't working real hard at it, but we can see Justin's peak is 224, but it's before shaft vertical downswing, so just after P5, lead arm parallel downswing. So that's a really important aspect. Now, there's that other very important torque, that frontal plane, that rock and roll torque, that is 140% generally more than that vertical one. If we look at just peak numbers in our system, I can show you a visual representation of Justin's frontal plane torque. So that's as rock and roll. That brings the club down, but also accelerates the club, and also impacts delivery of the club as well. But you can see Justin is creating a massive amount of this frontal plane. So if we watch this circle, the yellow circle, so the smaller the circle, the less torque, the bigger the circle, more torque. As we go down the line here, you can see how massive that is. And that's some of the work that Justin has done with Dr. Rose, in that not pushing more, less push with his vertical forces, but really maximizing that lateral and what we call moment arm. Moment arm combined with the amount of force, moment arm times the force creates torque. And we can see, so this distance is his moment arm for frontal plane. It's the distance, perpendicular distance between that force vector to his center of mass, and that creates that rotation. This all comes together to produce club head speed. So again, we see this common theme. So Justin's peaking this before club shaft vertical downswing, just a tick after P5. The PGA Tour guys, they're peaking at about P6, so club parallel downswing. So again, it's almost a full P position. The long drive guys are achieving these peak forces or starting these forces before even the PGA Tour. And your average player, what we'll see with average players is that they'll be peaking their vertical forces almost at impact or after impact. And Justin and I, if we have time, we'll show you some examples. So these are things that you can't see with your eyes. We can't see forces. We can't see torques. We see the manifestation of that, but with the force plates, we can measure these things. We can track these things. It's a measurable, and we can make some coaching decisions based on our observations, but also actual data.